When I came back from the hospital, I could still smell the antiseptic on my skin. My hands trembled as I unlocked the front door, my body weak but my heart grateful to be home. The house was quiet, too quiet for a Sunday afternoon. I walked slowly toward the kitchen, thinking about making myself a cup of tea. But then I stopped. There, beside the old fridge, the one I'd owned for 20 years, stood another one. Stainless steel, shiny, big enough to feed a family of 6, and before I could even ask, my son, Daniel, appeared behind me and said, "It's mine, Mom." Just like that. No smile, no hug, no welcome home. Just those 3 words, "It's mine." I remember standing there, gripping the countertop to steady myself, feeling something deep inside shift, not anger, not yet just confusion, and a tiny pinch of dread. That was the day I realized my home wasn't the same anymore. Before the hospital, life in our little house in Greenville, South Carolina, had its rhythm, not perfect, but peaceful enough. Mornings smelled like coffee and buttered toast. My son Daniel, 31, still lived with me after his divorce 3 years ago. I never complained. I told myself it was temporary, just until he got back on his feet. I worked part-time at the library, and on weekends, I baked banana bread and watched my favorite old shows. The neighbors, the Johnsons, used to tease me that my kitchen always smelled like cinnamon. Daniel wasn't always cold or distant. When his marriage fell apart, he came back broken. His wife had left him for someone she met at work, taking their 2-year-old daughter with her. I remember the night he showed up at my doorstep. It was raining, and he looked like a lost boy again. I opened the door, held him, and said, "You'll always have a home here," and for a while it was good. He helped around the house, fixed the porch light, even took over the grocery shopping when my knees got bad. We'd eat together at the small kitchen table, spaghetti on Tuesdays, chicken soup on Fridays. Sometimes we talked about the past, and sometimes we didn't talk at all. That was okay too. Silence can be gentle when there's love in it. But things changed after I fell sick last spring. It started as a simple infection, then spread to my kidneys. I was admitted to the hospital for what I thought would be a few days. It turned into almost 3 weeks. Daniel visited at first, bringing me magazines and fresh fruit. But as days went by, the visits grew shorter. He looked tired, distracted. I told myself he was worried. I told myself he was managing the house, the bills, the stress. But sometimes, when I called him, he didn't answer. Sometimes he said he was out with friends or busy with errands. I didn't think much of it. I was too weak to think much of anything. All I wanted was to come home, sit in my old armchair by the window, and hear the familiar hum of my refrigerator, the same one that had been running since Daniel was in high school. That sound meant home. It meant life was steady. But when I came home, there was a different hum, a colder one, a newer one, and a son I barely recognized. The first thing I noticed, besides the new fridge, was the change in the kitchen itself. The curtains were gone, the yellow floral ones I'd sewn myself 10 years ago. In their place were gray blinds. The counter that once held my cookie jar and the spice rack was now cluttered with energy drinks, protein bars, and a blender I'd never seen before. Even the smell was different. No cinnamon, no coffee. Just a sterile, artificial scent like a stranger's apartment. I turned to Daniel, trying to keep my voice steady. "Sweetheart, what happened to the old fridge?" He didn't look up from his phone. "I sold it. This one's better." I blinked. "You sold it?" "Yeah," he said, still scrolling. "Yours was ancient, Mom. The freezer barely worked. I used my money and got this one. It's mine." I wanted to say something, but my throat tightened. "Mine. Not ours. Not yours, Mom. Mine." I'd never heard him say it like that before, like a wall had gone up between us. I nodded slowly, pretending it didn't sting. "Well, it looks nice," I murmured, forcing a smile. "Just surprised me, that's all." He shrugged, still not looking at me. "You should rest. You look tired." That night, I sat in my bedroom and listened to the unfamiliar hum of the new fridge down the hall. It was louder, deeper, almost like it was breathing. I don't know why, but it made me uneasy. Maybe it wasn't the fridge at all. Maybe it was the silence between us. The next morning, I shuffled into the kitchen with my slippers brushing the linoleum. Daniel wasn't home. He'd left a note saying he'd be out for the day. I opened the new fridge to get milk for my tea. Everything inside was different neat rows of bottled water, protein shakes, prepackaged meals, not a single jar of my homemade jam, not even a carton of milk. It felt like I'd opened someone else's fridge, in someone else's home. So I boiled the water, made my tea black, and sat quietly at the table, staring at the sunlight bouncing off the steel door. Something told me quietly, insistently, that this wasn't just about a fridge. Something had shifted while I was gone. And whatever it wasn't going back to the way it was before. For the next few days, I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting. After all, Daniel had every right to buy himself a fridge. Maybe it was his way of taking responsibility, I told myself, of becoming independent again. But as I moved around my own house, things felt different. Not just the fridge. The atmosphere. There were new shoes by the door that weren't Daniel's size. A pink mug in the sink with lipstick stains. A faint trace of perfume that didn't belong to me. I noticed it the first evening I was strong enough to walk to the porch. I'd been craving the sunset, the quiet rhythm of crickets in the yard. When I passed the laundry basket, I saw a white blouse draped over the side, delicate, lace-trimmed, the kind you wear to dinner, not work. It wasn't mine. I stared at it for a long moment. My son hadn't mentioned seeing anyone. When he came home later, I asked gently, "Did someone leave their things here, Daniel?" He hesitated just for a second before saying, "Oh, that? It's a friend's. She stayed over one night because it was too late to drive home." He said it so casually that I almost believed him. Almost. But there was something new in his tone, defensive, closed off. Not the boy who used to tell me everything. Over the next week, my strength returned bit by bit. I started cooking again, though Daniel often came home late saying he'd already eaten. When we did share a meal, he scrolled on his phone between bites, barely speaking. I tried not to pry, but I couldn't help noticing how often he smiled at that screen, small secret smiles I hadn't seen in years. One night, as I was washing dishes, I heard laughter from his room. A woman's laugh, soft, low, and unfamiliar. I froze, dishcloth in hand. It wasn't the laugh of a friend. The next morning, I asked carefully, "Daniel, are you seeing someone?" He looked surprised. Yeah. Kinda. Oh, I smiled, pretending to be calm. "What's her name?" "Monica." He said it like it was nothing. Like she wasn't slowly taking up space in my home, in my son's world, in the silence that used to belong to us. I didn't know whether to feel happy or worried. Maybe both. It had been so long since I'd seen him care about anyone. Maybe this was good. Maybe she was helping him heal. Still, something in my gut felt unsettled. The first time I met Monica was a Saturday morning. I was sitting in the kitchen, sipping tea and reading the paper, when I heard the front door open. Daniel walked in, carrying grocery bags, and behind him was a woman about his age. She had long auburn hair, nails perfectly done, and a perfume that lingered in the air long after she smiled at me. "Mom," Daniel said, "this is Monica." She extended her hand. "It's so nice to finally meet." "To you, Mrs. Hale." Her voice was polite, her smile just a little too wide. "Please call me Linda," I said, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm, not warm, not cold, just calculated. They unpacked the groceries together, or rather, she did. She opened his fridge and started arranging things like she owned it. Almond milk, sparkling water, frozen pizza, and a tub of expensive-looking ice cream. I watched quietly, trying to ignore the sting in my chest as she said things like, "Daniel, you shouldn't keep your vegetables here, it ruins the texture, and I'll organize this shelf for your stuff, and this one for mine." Mine. That word again. I smiled through it, because that's what mothers do. After they went out that evening, I sat in the kitchen alone, staring at the two fridges side by side, the old one humming quietly in the corner, unplugged now, like a retired soldier still standing guard, and the new one bright, silver, modern, alive, with their laughter still echoing inside it. Over the next few weeks, Monica's presence grew louder, even when she wasn't there. Her toothbrush appeared in the bathroom, her shoes lined up neatly by the door, her favorite mug sat permanently beside the coffee machine. Once, I caught Daniel carrying boxes to the garage. When I asked what they were, he said, "Just making space. Monica might move some things in for a while." "For a while?" I repeated softly. Yeah, she's been spending a lot of time here, and it just makes sense. I looked at him, trying to read his face, the boy who used to hug me goodnight, the man who now avoided my eyes. Of course, I said, it's your life. He nodded, relieved that I didn't argue. But as he walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that he'd misunderstood something that he thought. This was his house, not ours. The next morning I noticed something else. The electricity bill double what it usually was. The grocery receipts for things I never used. When I asked Daniel about it, he said, "Don't worry about it, Mom, I'll handle it." But the thing is, he wasn't handling it. The bill still came in my name, the mortgage was still mine, the house was still mine. And yet, with every passing day, it felt less like home. One afternoon, while dusting the shelves in the living room, I found a small folded note tucked behind a photo frame. It was Daniel's handwriting. It said, "Monica move-in date TBD once Mom's fully recovered. Need to discuss ownership." Ownership. I sat there on the couch, holding that note, feeling my heart pound against my ribs. Ownership of what? My house? The same house where I'd raised him, where his father and I had built a life, brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck? I told myself there had to be a misunderstanding, but deep down something told me this was just the beginning. That night, I unplugged the new fridge, just to see what would happen. When Daniel came home and found it off, he snapped, "Mom, what did you do?" "It's using too much electricity," I said calmly. "I thought I'd give it a rest." He glared at me, really glared. "Don't touch my stuff, okay? This is my fridge. I paid for it." His words hit like cold water. My fridge, my stuff. He stormed off, slamming the door, and for the first time since I'd come back from the hospital, I cried. Not because of the fridge, not even because of his anger, but because I realized how far away my son had gone, even while living under my roof. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I made myself a quiet promise. If something was happening behind my back, if there was a plan I didn't know about, I would find out. No matter how much it hurt, it started with a phone call I wasn't supposed to hear. I was sitting in the living room that afternoon, knitting a small scarf to keep my hands busy. My health had improved, but my energy came in waves. Daniel had left his phone charging on the side table before stepping out to the garage. It buzzed once, then again, the screen lit up. "Monica, I didn't mean to look. Truly, I didn't, but..." When it buzzed a third time, curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up, thinking maybe it was something urgent. The message read, "Did you ask your mom yet? We can't move forward until you do. The realtor's waiting." My heart skipped a beat. Realtor? Before I could think, another message appeared. "We could sell it for at least $180K. Easy. You'll finally have enough to start over." "I'm tired of waiting, Danny." My hands went cold. I could hear the hum of that new fridge in the kitchen, low, mechanical, relentless, as if it knew what I'd just read. I put the phone down right as Daniel came back in, wiping grease from his hands. He glanced at me, then at the phone. "Everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Yes, just resting." He nodded, suspiciously casual, and took his phone. I watched him as he typed something quickly, maybe a reply, maybe a deletion. When he left again, I sat there, staring out the window at the magnolia tree in the front yard, the same tree his father planted when Daniel was born, the same tree that had watched us grow, fight, forgive, and rebuild for decades. Sell it? He wanted to sell my home? I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the house felt like a warning. Every hum of that fridge felt like a stranger breathing beside me. By morning, I'd made a decision, quiet but firm. I needed to know the truth. So while Daniel was at work, I went into his room. It still smelled faintly of his cologne, mixed with that same floral perfume Monica wore. I opened his desk drawer. Bills, receipts, keys. Nothing unusual until I found a manila envelope tucked beneath a stack of papers. It was labeled property info. Inside were printed emails. One was from a realtor named Janet Cummings. The subject line, preliminary appraisal and listing details. My name was on the document, Linda Hale, along with the property address, but there was something strange at the bottom. Owner proposed. Daniel Hale. My breath caught. Proposed owner. The emails continued conversations between Daniel and the realtor. He'd asked her about timelines, sale potential, and even mortgage transfer processes. The last message said, "Once my mom signs the paperwork, we'll finalize everything. My girlfriend and I are planning to relocate closer to Charlotte by summer." My fingers trembled as I held those papers. I felt dizzy, the room spinning slowly. He wasn't just thinking about selling my home, he was planning it. Behind my back, behind the same woman who nursed him through chickenpox, who drove him to college interviews, who sat up with him the night his wife left. When I heard his car pull into the driveway that evening, I sat in the living room waiting for him. The envelope was on the coffee table. He came in smiling, faintly tired, distracted. "Hey, Mom, you feeling okay?" I looked at him. "Sit down, Daniel." He frowned. "What's wrong?" I pointed to the envelope. "That's what's wrong." He froze. "Where did you? I found it," I said quietly. "You were going to sell the house?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Mom, it's not what you think." "Then what is it?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Because from what I read, you were planning to sell this place without telling me." He sat down slowly, avoiding my eyes. "It's just, you're not getting any younger, Mom. The house is too big for you. I thought maybe we could downsize, get you somewhere easier to manage." I shook my head. "Don't you dare twist this into concern. You were planning to move away with Monica." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. That silence told me everything. "Daniel," I said softly, "I've lived in this house for 40 years. Your father and I built our lives here. You took your first steps in that hallway, and you didn't even have the decency to talk to me before deciding to sell it?" He looked up, eyes flashing. "You don't understand, Mom. Monica and I, we need a fresh start. We've been stuck here too long, and yeah, I put in a lot of work around this place too. It's not fair for me to have nothing." "Nothing?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You have everything. A roof over your head, food, no rent, no debt. I don't want your charity," he snapped. "Charity?" I whispered. "Is that what you call a mother's love?" The room went quiet. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then he said it words that split something inside me. "You've had your life, Mom. It's time for me to live mine." He stood up and walked out. The front door closed with a final heavy thud. I sat there, staring at the envelope on the table, feeling my chest ache in ways no doctor could fix. That night, I called my friend Marlene. She'd been my neighbor for 30 years, a retired nurse with more sense than most. She listened quietly as I told her everything. When I finished, she said softly, "Linda, you need to protect yourself. If the house is still in your name, you're safe. But don't sign anything, not one paper." "I won't," I promised. Then she added something that stayed with me. "Sometimes, honey, love makes us blind to greed, especially when it's our own blood." A few days later, Monica came by when Daniel wasn't home. I didn't expect her. She walked in confidently, holding a small bouquet of lilies, the kind you bring when you want to seem sweet but calculated. "Hi, Mrs. Hale," she said cheerfully. "I just wanted to check on you. You've been through so much." I looked at her, really looked, the way she surveyed the living room, the furniture, the walls, as if she was imagining herself in it. I smiled politely. "I'm recovering, thank you." "Tea?" "Sure," she said, taking a seat. As the kettle boiled, she started talking about the market, about future plans, about how change can be good for everyone. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "You know, Daniel worries a lot about you. He just wants you settled somewhere peaceful before we move." Before we move, that was the confirmation I didn't want. She wasn't visiting to check on me. She was visiting to test the waters to see if I'd resist, or if I'd quietly fade into compliance. I poured her tea, smiled, and said, "That's thoughtful of him, but this house isn't going anywhere." She froze mid-sip. "Oh?" I nodded. "Your boyfriend must have forgotten to mention it's fully paid off and it's staying in my name. Till the day I die." Her smile faltered, just slightly. I watched her mask slip, just enough to see the woman underneath, cold, calculating, frustrated. "Well," she said, standing up, "I'll let Daniel know you're feeling better." "I'm sure you will," I said, watching her leave. As the door closed, I finally exhaled, long, slow, steady. I discovered the betrayal. Now it was time to decide what to do with it. I didn't sleep much after that day. I kept hearing Monica's voice in my head before we move. The nerve of it. The way she said we, as though she already belonged here, as though my son's childhood home was nothing but a piece of property waiting to be signed away. But anger, I've learned, is only useful when it's quiet. Loud anger burns fast, quiet anger builds power. So I waited. The next morning I called the county clerk's office to confirm the house title just to be sure. The woman on the line was polite. Yes, ma'am. Property under Linda Hale, no liens, no co-signers, no secondary owners. I let out a long breath. Thank you, I said softly. Thank you. For the first time in weeks, I felt like the ground beneath me was solid. Daniel avoided me after that evening with Monica. He'd leave early, come home late. I could hear them whispering on the porch sometimes, arguing in low voices. I didn't interrupt. I wanted them to think I was fading, a harmless, tired old woman who wouldn't notice what was happening. But I noticed everything. I started keeping a small notebook by my bedside. In it, I wrote dates, conversations, even the tiniest details the day Monica brought over moving boxes, the time Daniel received another email from the realtor, the night I overheard him talking about needing Mom's signature. It wasn't about revenge. It was abo. UT self-defense. A week later, I decided to test him gently. Over dinner, I said, Daniel, the realtor called me today. He froze mid-bite. What? I smiled calmly. Janet. Lovely woman, said she'd been in touch with you. His face drained of color. You, how did you? I didn't, I interrupted. She called by mistake, thought I was confirming an appointment for a house showing. He set his fork down, jaw tightening. Mom, listen. I leaned forward, my tone still soft. I'm listening. I just didn't want to stress you while you were recovering. Oh, I see, I nodded. So you thought selling my home without asking me was less stressful? Mom, come on, he snapped, his voice rising. You're twisting everything I say. I just wanted what's best for both of us. I stared at him for a long moment. No, Daniel, you wanted what's best for you. He opened his mouth, then shut it. His shoulders slumped, and for a brief second, I saw the boy he used to be, the one who used to cry when he broke something precious, the one who used to say sorry without pride in the way. But that boy was gone. Now there was a man sitting across from me, a man who'd lost his way and didn't even realize how far he'd wandered. After he went to bed, I made my move. The next morning, I visited Marlene. She made us tea and listened carefully as I laid everything out, the emails, the phone messages, the conversations. When I was done, she said, You need a lawyer, Linda. Even if you trust your son, you don't trust that woman. She was right. So I made an appointment with a local attorney, Mr. Clements, a kind older man who'd helped me with my husband's estate years ago. He looked over the documents and nodded. You're in control here, Mrs. Hale. The deed's solely yours, but you might want to consider a living trust. It'll protect your property and make sure no one tampers with it without your consent. A living trust? I repeated. He explained everything patiently, and by the end of that meeting, I'd made up my mind. 2 days later, my home was officially placed in a trust locked under my name, with explicit instructions that no sale, transfer, or modification could occur without my personal approval and legal witnesses. It was like putting a lock on my heart and throwing away the key. That evening, Daniel came home looking unusually cheerful. Hey, he said. Monica's making dinner tonight. Thought it'd be nice to eat together. It almost felt like old times almost. She cooked pasta with too much garlic and poured wine into the fancy glasses I kept for guests. Throughout dinner, she smiled that polite, practiced smile of hers, asking about my health and future plans. Finally, near dessert, Daniel cleared his throat. Mom, there's something I wanted to ask you. Here it was. Yes, dear? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a few papers. So, these are just some routine forms. The bank needs updated signatures for insurance, and I stopped him right there. Let me see them. His hand hesitated. I took the papers and read the first line. My lips curved into a calm, cold smile. It wasn't insurance paperwork. It was a power of attorney form, the kind that would give him control over my finances and assets. Routine forms? I asked softly. He swallowed hard. Mom, it's just easier for me to handle the paperwork while you're recovering, Daniel, I said, folding the paper neatly and setting it aside. If you ever ask me to sign something like this again, I'll have the locks changed. Monica tried to speak. Mrs. Hale, you're misunderstanding. No, dear, I said, meeting her eyes. I understand perfectly. You both want a fresh start, but not in my house. She shifted uncomfortably, trying to mask her irritation. We just thought that's your first mistake, I said quietly. You thought. You didn't ask. The silence that followed was heavy. Daniel looked torn between shame and anger. Monica looked like she was deciding whether to argue or retreat. Finally, she stood up. See? Come on, Daniel, let's go. He hesitated but followed her, slamming the door behind him. I sat there alone at the table, the untouched dessert in front of me, the papers beside my plate. I didn't cry this time. I didn't even shake. I just felt tired. Because somewhere deep down I knew that confrontation was only the beginning. The next day I wrote Daniel a letter, not to scold him but to remind him who he was. You were born in this house, Daniel. Your father built it with his hands and his hope. I never wanted to keep you here. I only wanted to give you roots. But somewhere along the way you mistook my love for something you could own. I hope you remember that love is not property, and mothers are not obstacles. I left the letter on his dresser. He didn't mention it for 3 days, but when he did, it wasn't words, it was silence. He stopped looking me in the eye, stopped eating at the table, stopped calling me Mom. But at least now, I knew where I stood. And more importantly, my home was safe. 2 weeks passed. 2 long, silent weeks. The house had never felt so still. Daniel and Monica barely spoke to me, moving like ghosts through the hallways. I'd hear drawers closing softly, doors clicking shut, whispers behind my back, but I didn't confront them. I waited, because sometimes the best way to reveal truth is to let people expose themselves. One Saturday morning, I heard the front door open. Monica's voice floated through the hallway. Yes, right this way. We can start with the living room. My heart froze. I stepped into the hall just as a strange woman, young, professional, holding a clipboard, entered behind her. Hello, the woman smiled politely. I'm from Hampton Realty. You must be Mrs. Hale. Your son mentioned we'd be doing an appraisal today. The world seemed to tilt. An appraisal? I repeated softly. Before Monica could speak, Daniel appeared from behind her, eyes wide. Mom, if this isn't what it looks like. Oh? I asked, calm but cold. Then tell me, Daniel, what is it? He hesitated. His silence said enough. The realtor looked between us awkwardly. Yumi can come back another time. You won't need to, I said, stepping closer. This house is not for sale. It's under a living trust in my name. If you attempt to list it, I'll have you and your agency served for fraud. Her eyes widened. Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. I wasn't aware. I'm sure you weren't, I said, my voice like ice. You may leave now. She left without another word. As soon as the door shut, I turned to face them both. Daniel looked pale. Monica's expression had curdled, the mask finally slipping. Do you have any idea what you've done? I asked quietly. You tried to sell your own mother's home behind her back. Monica stepped forward, voice sharp. You don't understand, Mrs. Hale. We're drowning. Daniel's job barely covers the bills. You're sitting on equity that could help us start over. I raised my hand. Enough! Her words hit me like stones, but they didn't break me. I'd already been broken once when I realized my own son had stopped seeing me as family and started seeing me as a financial obstacle. You wanted my home, I said slowly, because you thought I wouldn't fight back. You thought I was weak. Daniel's eyes filled, but he didn't speak. I turned away from them both. You have 1 week, I said. Find another place to stay. The news spread quickly, not because I told anyone, but because Monica did. At the grocery store, I heard whispers. Did you hear about Linda's son? Tried to sell her house. I pretended not to notice, though part of me wanted to disappear into the floor. I wasn't proud of the scandal, but I wasn't ashamed either. A few days later, Marlene came over with a pie and a look of grim satisfaction. Good for you, she said, slicing into it. About time you stopped letting them walk all over you. I smiled faintly. It's not victory, Marlene, it's just survival. By midweek, Daniel packed his things. He didn't say much, just moved quietly, avoiding my eyes. Monica wasn't quiet at all, slamming cabinets. muttering curses under her breath, her perfume thick in the air like something rotten disguised as sweet. On their last night, Daniel stood by the door, suitcase in hand. "Mom," he said softly, "I'm sorry, I wanted to say something, anything, but the words stuck in my throat, so I just nodded." When he stepped outside, Monica turned to me one last time. "You'll regret this," she said. I smiled faintly. I already did. And then she was gone. After they left, the house felt quiet but not empty. There's a difference between silence that suffocates and silence that heals. I made tea, sat by the window, and watched the autumn wind shake the trees. It was the same house, the same view, yet everything had changed, because for the first time in a long while I felt safe. A few days later, I received a call from the same realtor, Janet, the one Daniel had originally contacted. "Mrs. Hale," she said hesitantly, "I just wanted you to know your son came by to apologize. He told me to cancel everything. He said you weren't just his mother, you were his home." I didn't respond right away. My eyes stung. "Thank you," I said finally. When I hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the family photo on the mantel. Daniel, just 8 years old, covered in mud and smiling wide, holding his father's hammer. He'd lost his way, but maybe, just maybe, there was still a path back. That Sunday I went to church. It had been months since I'd gone. When I walked in, people looked at me with quiet respect. Not pity, not gossip, just understanding. During the sermon, Pastor Ellis said something that stayed with me. Sometimes, God doesn't protect you from betrayal. He uses it to protect you from destruction. I closed my eyes and let that sink in, because that's exactly what had happened. That evening, I wrote another letter, not to Daniel this time, but to myself. "Dear Linda, you have weathered storms that tried to take your heart. You have watched your own blood turn cold and still chosen love. You have stood alone in the house you built, and you are still standing. That is not loneliness, that is strength. I folded it and placed it inside my husband's old Bible, because someday, when I'm gone, I want Daniel to find it and remember not the fight, not the shame, but the lesson, that a mother's love is not a bank account. It's a shelter, and if you burn it down, you can't rebuild it with money." Outside, the wind howled, the porch light flickered, and in the quiet, I whispered to the walls that had held our laughter, our grief, our history, "You're safe now, and maybe, finally." So was I. Winter came quietly that year. The first snow dusted the maple tree outside my window like powdered sugar, and for the first time in months, I felt the house breathe again. It had been almost 3 months since Daniel and Monica left. In the beginning, the quiet hurt, not because I missed the noise, but because silence makes you face things you'd rather not. Every corner of the house held a memory: his laughter as a child, the scrape of his shoes when he ran through the hallway, the smell of his favorite soup simmering on the stove. But day by day, something changed. I started planting again, little pots of herbs on the windowsill. I fixed the old curtain rods, cleaned the attic, even painted the kitchen walls a soft cream color. The same kitchen where I'd once seen that new fridge standing like a symbol of division now looked warm, peaceful, mine again. And sometimes, while washing dishes, I'd catch myself humming. One afternoon, I went to the market for groceries. As I browsed the apples, someone called softly behind me. "Mom?" I turned. Daniel stood there, older somehow, thinner. His coat looked worn, his face unshaven. There were tired lines around his eyes, the kind life draws when someone's been carrying too much guilt. He took a hesitant step forward. "Can I talk to you?" I didn't speak right away. I just nodded. We walked to the small cafe across the street. Tea. Sat down by the window. Steam rose from our cups, blurring the glass between us and the world outside. For a while, neither of us spoke. The sound of the coffee machine filled the silence. Finally, Daniel said quietly, "You were right." I looked at him. "About what?" He swallowed. "Everything." He told me Monica had left, took most of the savings and moved out. He tried to call her, but she blocked him. The car, the fridge, the plans all gone. "I was stupid," he said, voice breaking. She said we needed a fresh start, but what she really wanted was control, and I gave it to her. I gave her everything. I listened, my heart heavy. There was a part of me that wanted to comfort him immediately, to reach out like I used to when he scraped his knees as a boy. But another part of me knew this was something he needed to feel. Pain teaches what comfort cannot. I don't expect you to forgive me, Daniel said softly. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I became. I took a sip of coffee. The warmth steadied me. Daniel, I said finally, you don't need my forgiveness to start over. You need your own. He looked at me, eyes glassy. I don't deserve you. Maybe not, I said gently, but you're still my son. He covered his face with his hands. When he looked up, there were tears. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered. And just like that, the weight between us shifted. Not gone, but lighter. After that day, Daniel began to visit again, slowly, cautiously, like a man testing ice to see if it would hold. He'd help me with groceries, fix the porch steps, sometimes just sit on the swing in silence. He didn't move back in, and I didn't ask him to. We both knew that love doesn't always mean going backward. Sometimes it means learning how to walk beside each other again, with boundaries, with respect. One Sunday, I invited him for dinner. The table looked just like it used to: roast chicken, potatoes, green beans, and that same chipped gravy bowl my husband used to tease me about. Halfway through the meal, Daniel smiled faintly. You painted the kitchen, he said. I did. It looks nice. I smiled back. It feels nice. We laughed softly, and for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel forced. That night, after he left, I stood in the doorway watching him drive away. The snow had started again, gentle, slow, forgiving. The light from his car disappeared down the road, but I didn't feel sad. I felt whole. Because forgiveness isn't about erasing what happened. It's about choosing not to let it define you anymore. Weeks later, I received a small delivery. A note was tucked inside. For your kitchen, love, Daniel. It was a new tea kettle. Simple, silver, not fancy, but on the side, engraved in small letters, were 3 words, ours again, Mom. I held it in my hands and cried, not from sadness, from release. Because I realized the same kitchen that once held resentment and betrayal now held something else, healing. That night, as I made tea, I thought about everything that had happened: the fridge, the fights, the silence, the rebuilding. Life doesn't break in one big moment. It cracks slowly, through small betrayals we ignore until the truth stands staring us in the face. But healing happens the same way: one small act of courage, one honest conversation, one quiet forgiveness at a time. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything. When I finally went to bed, I looked around the home I'd fought so hard to keep. The walls were the same, the furniture familiar, but something deeper had shifted. It no longer felt like a place filled with ghosts of what I'd lost. It felt like a place waiting for what comes next. I turned off the lamp, whispering to the darkness, I forgive you, Daniel. And I forgive myself, too. When I look back now, I realize that the hardest part wasn't losing trust. It was learning how to keep loving after it was gone. People talk about forgiveness like it's a gift you give someone else. But truth is, it's something you give yourself, so you can stow. Pee bleeding from wounds that no one else knows still ache. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you raised, someone you'd have given your last breath for, you know that kind of pain doesn't leave quickly, but it does soften when you stop asking why they did it and start asking what it taught you. My son took something from me, yes, but in the end he also gave me something I didn't know I'd lost, the courage to stand alone and still be whole. So if you're listening right now and someone has broken your heart, maybe it's time to stop fighting for their apology and start building your own peace. Because one day, you'll wake up in the same kitchen where everything fell apart and realize you've built something stronger in its place. Tell me, if it were you, would you have let your son come back? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories like mine. Thank you for listening.